Up on the wall, I like to climb and play with the sky. The people far below, the air is clear. I can't perceive the whole world is shining. Life is sublime when you dare to go up in the air and leave the earth far behind you. As a step and you can leap into the space beyond the height. Just for the moment, alive and so free, but alive as a brush against the sky, and my heart is open, free. Fear turns to joy when you embrace the edge of the sky. And life's intense and strong. It won't be long before you run beyond your horizon. Upon one, the light is dead, and you must balance up against the sky so precisely. But the lights they do go on as far as you can see. I find just for the moment, alive and so afraid, but alive and watch disappear, and you find it broken free. Life is blind when you dare to go up in the air and leave the earth far behind you. But the lights they do go on as far as you can see. I'll climb just for the moment, alive and so free, but alive and while it's disappeared, and you're finally broken free, free,
Woohoo! That sounded so beautiful.
Thank you. I know that yours sounds beautiful as well.
This is Lisa Rich, ladies and gentlemen, my friend, my old friend, and we we go back quite a ways. When she came out here, and she was, uh, we had a mutual friend, Ned Einstein. We should have invited Ned Einstein.
I sent him a little link.
Oh, good. That would be so much fun to see Ned. Hi, Carrie. Hi, Andrea Wolper. It
Oh,
is
Carrie, hi.
so
She said she
beautiful.
can join.
Curly Rousseau.
Hi,
And
Curly.
sometimes it's hard to log on. Mike Campbell.
Mikey.
He's sending you love.
I'm sending love back. Michael
Um,
Stevens called me right before I came on with you,
oh, good.
and I wanted to mention him too.
Yeah.
He's such a
Yeah,
love.
and of course, Lisa and I were just on Sunny Wilkinson's show. She's doing a show similar to this, and she's doing it every 2 weeks on a Monday, 11 o'clock to 12. And yeah, Sunny's great to listen
My
to.
singer too. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, really good. So, Lisa Rich, that uh, Nalini, you didn't really miss anything. I mean, we're listening to her on YouTube, and if you want, I will send you the link. I will copy the link here since you asked. Here you go. And June Montgomery says hello.
That's my student.
Oh, cool. So, Lisa, so you have a really inspiring story, and it's I don't know if it's still hard to talk about it. You know, I would imagine it would be because, or depending on the moment, because it's so emotional that just reliving it and talking about it is perhaps very difficult. Is that true?
Um, it's a really great question, and I wanted to talk about it because people wanted to know why I put out an album that was 30 years old. And I thought that to be authentic was really the only way I could come back after 20 years of not singing out. I've been singing and I've been teaching, but to come out and put out a record from 1987, a lot of it had to do with my mom passed away. And something rose up inside of me because she's an artist and I'm an artist and we're very into color. And I just had said to my husband, if I'm ever up to it, I want to put this album out and I want to go back and sing because I just really miss making music with everyone. And so we went into the studio and it was still in the 24 track reels. And we went in and we searched for tunes for a couple of days. And I knew what I had because I had a cassette of it, but we had never really mixed it. So after we got through that, I put it out last year in June. And I realized that then I was going to have to do a concert. And so this time it would be in a chair instead of dancing around and doing all the things that I did in my, up till about my 50s. I was singing from about 13 until about 52, something like that. And then I started the music school and I started teaching full time. And that was a difficult decision, but it was the right decision because I couldn't travel. And I had an opportunity to teach at the Smithsonian. And I gave a course there. And there were about 50 people who ended up then becoming my students. And because of that, I realized that I could give workshops because I had just been teaching privately over the years.
Yeah.
I had never had a workshop, but after doing it at the Smithsonian, I realized that that was a really amazing way to teach people what you and I probably just learned on the gig. Because I didn't know how to be a front person. I just knew how to sing with my eyes closed, and I played guitar when I just started out. And learning to sing with a band is very complicated, and you don't want to be doing it in front of an audience or in front of an audition, that kind of thing. So what I love about the workshops is you get a band and you spend a month and you get people to figure out how to do their charts and their keys and how to talk down the intros and the endings. And then the band's there and they don't have to like pretend that they know what's happening because they can stop and ask questions. And
Right.
so ask the piano player.
Now, I want to interrupt you because you have morphed. Your subject has morphed. So, and I want to get to all that, but we have a long time to talk.
I know.
So again, I'm just going to go back to what happened to you.
Okay, so I was born with something called spondylolisthesis.
Okay.
And I was pretty much fine as a kid, but I did have some issues, and I went to physical therapy as a kid. But I was pretty normal, and I came up singing. And when I was 23, I told my dad, who was a physician, that I wanted to be a singer full time, and I was in college at the time. And he said, go to the doctor and let him tell you what to do. And the doctor said, I think if you want to be on tour for 30 years and go from place to place, you're going to need some back surgery and then you'll be okay. So I said, okay. So at 23, I had moved to New York. I was studying with David Collier-Soren, who a couple of people on your show mentioned.
Sorry, hold one moment. Alan, show up. No, not yet. Okay, sorry. I'm having kitchen work done and
it will be worth it.
I have to be dragged away occasionally. Sorry. So what were you saying?
So I had to come home from New York City.
Yeah.
After I'd already become a singer and I was on tour. And I got stuck in Maine, I think, at a place in Bangor, Maine. And I realized I just needed to have the surgery. So I went home and had a spinal fusion. It took about a year to get better. And then it took about a year of gigging 6 nights a week to get my voice back and to get the movement back. But then I felt pretty good. So I went back to New York and went out to LA. I did my first album in 1982. I recorded and they didn't have CDs yet, so I wanted to show it. It's a vinyl. And then they invented CDs when I met you. And the very first CD that I ever heard of was mine, going direct to 2-track in sunny California. And but that did come out on a record as well. So that was my second album. And then the new one is just a CD. I'd be happy to make it into a vinyl if everybody's buying a record player. And then here's, of course, the other one. So now that I've done that, I'll answer your question. So I really enjoy teaching. I really enjoy singing live. I wish I could have done my very favorite things and had everything go my way. But I realized that I've got a certain strength that I wouldn't have had if I didn't have my story and if I didn't have all the years of teaching that I've had that have made me a very different kind of singer than I would have been. So I was a very big technique person. I wasn't so much starting out as a jazz singer as a student of voice, and everything was about tone. I wanted to get the quality of the voice.
You certainly did too, because your tone.
Thank you. And I've really enjoyed teaching that to people. A lot of it has to do with singing like you talk. Conversational.
Yeah.
I love to take people that are over singing and teach them to just tell a quiet story from their heart, their real personality. And sometimes you draw from those painful moments to really make good music. And that's my specialty. I really think that I have a lot of experiences that have been fantastic and a lot that have been very hard. And that's what makes you who you are when you begin to come back in this way. I started out singing when I was 12. And my cousin was getting bar mitzvahed, and my dad had just bought me a guitar. And so I had to stand up in the pew and sing a little Hebrew as I strummed. No mic, no nothing, but stood up, and it was part of the ceremony. And as I was listening to everybody rapping on your show and hanging, I thought, when was my first gig? And that was it. And then after that, my parents realized that I was free entertainment. And so my dad had these parties twice a year, one in the winter and one in the summer, and there would be about 100 people from his job. And I would be the free gig. So I would come out with my guitar. First, I would collect the coats because I was still his daughter. And then when I was finished putting all the coats on the bed, I would get the guitar and I would do a set. So that's how I learned how to put together a 40-minute set. A little talking in between. And then I would go back to my room, and the people who were interested would come back and talk to me. And I think one of the most amazing nights of my life was the night that I sang the song about the Hiroshima. And a guy who had actually lived there, because my dad brought people from all over the world to work for him, he came to my room and he said, "I'm from there. And you just sang a song about the war and what had happened in my life." And he started to cry, and I started to cry. And it was just like, wow, music can really connect you to people. And I never saw him again, but he worked with my dad for many years. And
oh, wow.
Very touching.
Yeah.
And it was an interesting way to start singing, of course. And then when I went to college, I started singing in a band.
Mm-hmm.
So it was just weekends, and I was a voice major at University of Maryland.
Okay.
And that was very frustrating because they just had classical. So as they were teaching me to do classical Italian arias, Italian art songs, Fauré and Debussy and all that kind of stuff, I really felt that I didn't have the right kind of voice for classical music. But there I was because I didn't know what else to major in. I was a musician, I was a singer. So, and I didn't have a flute, or I didn't feel I was really good enough at piano to major in that. But as you said, as things went by 20 years later, you can manage to get a degree in everything, including recording and jazz and producing, curating, everything
Yeah.
is part of the educational system. And I'm very pleased about that. But as I began to teach, I realized that I needed to teach people that, because I learned to sing by being on the stand with the band and not having a clue what to do and just being stuck. And eventually I realized it was just like a singing lesson. If I were myself, everybody would be fine and everything would seem normal. Um, but you have a different voice when you go on stage, like you have a different voice when you talk to your sister or your mom. And so, and sometimes it's not what you say, it's what you don't say.
Yeah.
Anyway,
And,
I'm happy to be back. So I made this big comeback in time for the pandemic.
okay.
So,
Now, again, the reason why I'm kind of pushing to hear your story is because, uh, because I want, I want, not everybody understands what happened exactly to you. At some point, did you stop singing? Did you have to stop singing, or what happened to your body? There was something very dramatic that changed for you, correct?
yeah. Um, I did a lot of traveling.
Yeah.
I went to China, I went to India. That's a long trip. That's a very hard trip
Yeah,
for
yeah.
anybody to get back. Um, it was spectacular, and I'm really glad that I did it before I couldn't do this. But I actually climbed up to the top of the Great Wall and climbed down and did 2 concerts in one day. I was doing pretty well then. That was right before Tiananmen Square. We got a chance to go over there for about a week, and we did the touring in the day and the gigging in the night, and it was just lovely. We were just in Beijing for a week. Um, so traveling really takes a lot of health, and singing is a real sport. It's a physical sport. So I decided that if I were to teach, I would still be singing, but I wouldn't be expected to travel as much, and I wouldn't have quite the physical challenge that I was going to have. So I taught pretty much until 2004, and I was singing. I think my last gigs were in the early 90s. So I did the Kennedy Center, was one of my last concerts. And then I did some things at the embassies, which are near me in Washington.
Did you have to stop did you have to stop singing at a certain point?
Yeah, I really did. I really, I started to not be able to hold myself up.
Oh, I see. Okay,
So
so the disease that you have
it's
is
a
a
lower back.
muscle.
It's a
Oh,
lower back. It's my lower back, and it's about the bone. It's the spine that's
okay.
off. So it's just something that I was born with. That's congenital. My
Yeah,
dad had it.
yeah.
Probably his dad had it
Oh,
too.
wow. So you
And
couldn't actually hold yourself up to stand up, obviously, but and your singing was directly affected, or
well, it happened kind of gradually, but eventually I just started to notice that I was leaning on furniture, and I was kind of going from chair to chair. And I remember going to a restaurant, and I need somebody to actually hold my hand and walk me to the ladies' room.
oh,
So that was a little tough. And had I just maybe sat down and did a gig in a chair, I might have been able to stay, but I just didn't know it at the time.
Okay.
So what I did was I just started teaching full time. I became a resident associate at the Smithsonian, and we did some concerts every Thursday. And I did the course, and I did some teaching at University of Maryland, and I also did Virginia Commonwealth University had a voice department and no voice teacher. So I used to go down there and teach once a week. That was about an 11-hour day. That's a lot of fun. With Bob Hallahan was my friend there who I had worked with in Washington. A
So
great.
what I'm understanding is there was a point where your physical body was going through something quite dramatic, and you decided the opportunities and your decisions about what it took to put effort into various things. You obviously your path was teaching. I mean, that was kind of this huge invitation for you, which you took, and that's basically why you slowed down and eventually stopped singing because you were so dedicated to teaching.
No, I really stopped because I was sick. So
Oh,
as I was teaching, I was doing that full time.
yeah.
Then I actually had to stop. And my life kind of stopped for a little while. And I became disabled, and I got a walker, and I was in bed, and I had somebody who had to help me when my husband was gone, somebody who had to help me take a shower. And that sucked. That was the worst part of my situation. And so the next thing that happened was I started going to a pool at the hospital and walking for an hour 3 times a week. And I met some lovely people. And I started singing to them in the pool.
Huh?
So I was a singer in the pool. It was kind of ridiculous, but it was just my personality. I just give music as a gift as a person. So one day there was a lady about 90 crying on the steps, and I swam out and I walked over to her in the pool, and I said, "What's wrong?" And she said, "I'm really depressed." And I said, "Do you have a favorite song?" And she said, "Climb Every Mountain." And I said, "Well, could I sing it for you? Maybe make you feel better?" And I'm doing my exercises. I didn't stop working while I was, having a little musical moment. So I start to sing it to her, and she starts to sing with me.
Oh,
And guess what? She gets to the high note and she's killing it. And I dropped out and she went, "Whoa!" And then she wasn't crying. She was like blown away with music. So I would go around and I would sing to everybody in the pool. And then there was this one day where everybody said, "Can you please stop singing?" And they started putting on the radio. So I said, "Okay, I guess I'm not going to be a singer in the pool." But so that went on for quite some time. And the thing that I did besides that was I went home and saw my parents, and I got married, and I did a lot of just family things. And my spirit was full, but I was very upset. I was very angry to lose my ability to walk, and I was very angry to have my voice not sound so good because as soon as you're out of work, your voice gets cobwebs on it. So the other thing that happened to me was I went to the voice doctor as I tried to make my comeback, and he said, "You have vocal atrophy." And I said, "What the heck is that?" And he said, "It's when you're older and your vocal cords, it's not like having nodules. It's the opposite. It's like your vocal cords get a little thicker. And when you go to talk, your vocal cords don't all the way close, so they don't vibrate, and you get a little bit, it sounds like you're hoarse. But the answer to it is the opposite of when you're hoarse, which is to rest and to learn to sing correctly, because I do sing correctly. The answer when you have atrophy is to sing more and to use more strength and to develop the strength, because then you can maybe get rid of the atrophy. So when I found that I had the atrophy, I went to a speech therapist and I started doing all these things. And as a voice teacher, it was so funny because it was stuff that we never did as singers, but I was blowing into a straw and I was just trying to get my breathing back, because when you have a bad back and your core is weak, you stop breathing. I mean, you know how when you're upset, you stop breathing? Well, when you're sick, you stop breathing like for 5 or 10 years. And so you have to really make a huge effort to regain that because singing is such a physical sport. So I have this lovely girl who lives across the hall from me that I call my adopted daughter. And she's about 40, has a fabulous voice. And she asked me if she could have a singing lesson. And I was still in bed. This was about 4 Christmases ago. I said, come on over. And she comes in my bed. It's Christmas Eve. And I give her a 3 hour singing lesson. And I thought, you know what? I'm probably well enough to take her as a student. So that was my first thing that I got out of bed for. And then I went on Facebook and I met this guy from Los Angeles named Fernando Gelbart. I'm not sure how to pronounce it. And he and I started writing. I had never been on Facebook. And he said, how about if I introduce you to some of my music friends? Because, you know, I was really connected in the day. And I was on a big label in jazz and had met a lot of wonderful musicians, but I got disconnected. And so he started sharing all his Facebook friends with me until I had about 100 lovely people that were all musicians that I knew their parents. I knew, oops, sorry. Turning that off. Where was I? I'm having a senior moment.
Facebook friends, 100.
So I started getting all these people on Facebook. Then I started getting some people who wanted to study. Oh, here we are. Then I got some people who wanted to study. Somebody left me a message. I'm so sorry. I thought I had that off. And then I realized I wanted to put out the record. So I put out the record, and then I got a publicist, and she said, now you have to get a gig, because now you just made this big commitment. You threw yourself out there, and you said, and now I'm going to put myself out there. So put yourself out there. So there I was on Facebook, and there was this lovely guy, Dick Smith, who used to be a Redskin in Washington, but he's also a great jazz singer and a blues singer. And he books a place in DC called Westminster, DC. And they have had jazz every Friday night for 22 years.
Wow.
It's $5. You go, it's a fish fry, and there are 350 people there that crowd in there. Even on the stage, they have an audience. And they are the most wonderful, loving people. And they come every week, and they are just the jazz folks of Washington. And it's not, you know, like going to a club. It's like going to a church for music. And so that was where I made my comeback. And the picture you put on your page of me was 5 seconds before I went on after years. So that shit-eating grin was me so happy and so scared and so excited. So I called Dick on Facebook on the messenger, and I said, could I come sing? And he said, yes. How about like in 2 weeks? And I said, no. How about giving me a few months? And so he gave me a date. And I went on the radio with my old friend Rusty Hassan. And, you know, it was like I went back to life. So it was really great. I was, I called all the people that I used to know, and you know, half of them weren't alive anymore. But the other half had been in music the whole time. And so it was so wonderful to reconnect. A really special person to me is Jay Clayton. And I had been friends with her since about the same time I met you, about 35 years ago. And I always wanted to spend some time studying with her.
Yeah.
But I never could get to New York. And she has all these wonderful workshops of scatting. And I did one or two of them when I was visiting New York. And she came to hear me sing a couple times, which was really a big treat.
Uh-huh.
Then one day she came to my house for dinner, and we got to know each other. So we've just stayed in touch all these years. But when the pandemic hit, I called her up and I said, now's the time. Are you teaching? I heard you were going to teach. And I think I might have been her first call. And so I signed up. And I started singing for her every week. And I started to get better. And this was after I did my 2 concerts and the pandemic started. But that first concert was really something. I was petrified because I had never sung in a chair. And I also had decided that I was ready. And so it was just a matter of how I was going to get up there. Because all of a sudden I saw there were 3 huge steps and I had my walker. So my husband just appeared and he walked backward and I walked forward and he sat me down on the stool and he made it back to the iPad in time to tape my first song. And then I did about 3 songs and then it was a quintet. I didn't even really meet them until I was at the gig. So I just had the charts and I hadn't sung. And the piano player and I had talked and, talked through the tunes. And I just had, my charts from 30 years ago. And I just said, okay, now or never. And so I went and my publicist said, oh, yay, thank God. You put your stuff on the radio, you got all these write-ups. Now you're going to actually go sing and see how it feels. Well, it was so scary. That first moment, I was shaking and I wanted to just get out of my chair and dance. And I just thought to myself, well, you're just going to have to do it with your heart. And so I did. I had the best time. And I wish that I could have stood up and danced, but because I couldn't, I knew other parts of myself. And then at the end, bless you, my golly. We should both have a sip of water.
Go for it. I have all my little drinks here.
Okay, I'm going to
get my voice lozenges.
I hear that. Anyway, so bless you. What were we saying?
I'm not sure where you were.
I was talking about, so I was singing at this place, and so there were 3 sets. And so the second set, I had a lot of friends that showed up, and I had some old students show up. And so I went through the crowd, and then it was time to come back up. And I kind of had prepared myself for 10 years for this. Was I going to have the nerve to go through the entire audience and roll my way to the stage? So if you really want to know the details, that was the scariest moment of, I think, my whole comeback. And so I rolled through and everybody looked at me with so much love and so little judgment. And I thought the only person who really cares that I can't walk is me. So that was like, okay, I can do this. So the audience was fantastic. The band was so supportive, and they said it was an honor to be the first band that you got to sing with in all these years. And it was my honor to be playing with a quintet first. I thought maybe I'd start out with just bass or a piano player, but it was just like, 2 horns, gigantic room, standing ovation at the end. And the most fun part was at the end, Dick came out to sing a duet with me. Well, he's about 9 feet tall, and there I was at my stool. I was looking up at him, and I was just thinking, I should have asked him to sit down in a stool. So that's a funny picture of me singing with him. But then at the end, we all took pictures, and we put them all over Facebook. And it was just so much fun. And I realized I'm a singer. And I was not singing for a long time. But I am going to sing until I don't breathe anymore from now on, because it is not something you can skip. If you are truly a singer, you must sing. And the years that I didn't sing, it really hurt. So I am really happy that I met a wonderful physical therapist years ago. And I said, I want my singing back. And she said, I don't know how to do it, but I would like to be part of it. And I think we're going to write a book
Mm,
about what we did in the last year
great idea.
and a half, because I came into her and she started asking me to do things, and everything was her creative guess at what could help me get the strength back to be a singer, because she's not a singer. So after I worked with a speech therapist, I have continued to work with her, and we even work online now. So now I sing and she watches me sing and she talks about my breathing, or if my right foot goes up in the air. She goes, "Why is your right foot going up in the air?" I don't know. Let me just put it back down. So there are all kinds of crazy things that are going on, tensions. And part of it is because I'm getting my voice back, and part of it is because I have physical issues. So it's different. Um, so I have to really make sure that I make the heart soul connection, because it's not as easy to have it just pop out like it did in my 30s.
Yeah, you know, the other thing is, the other thing that's interesting that I keep finding too, because I have this cough, a chronic cough that I've had for years.
Which
And
is
so,
great.
well, the thing is, you know, it's all it's a personal perspective, right? You know, you realize certain things that you're doing or you're not doing or whatever. But as I went through the last few years with my voice teacher, I I started discovering what I wasn't seeing about myself. Like you're describing, oh, your foot's going up. It is? Okay, well, let me change that, you know. And so it really helps to have somebody you trust outside of yourself, no matter where you are in your growth as a human being in a whatever you are, a musician or singer or whatever. And so it helps to have somebody you trust outside of yourself to look in your face and say, "You're doing this," or "You're not doing this," and you have to go, "Okay, yeah, yep, you're right," you know, and then you have to
Yeah.
fix it.
You
But
got to
we,
hear it and then you got to get it right. Yeah.
yeah, so it takes a lot of strength, and um, I feel very fortunate to have a few people like that who will say stuff to me, you know, with love, but I mean, they're saying, you're pointing out stuff that I might like to change, you know?
I think the recording process is also a really great way,
Yeah.
because you're taping yourself and you're working on perhaps new material, and you're looking at where you're at that point of your development and what it is you're trying to thematically put out, what you're trying to say, what you're trying to offer, you're offering. And each time with me, I've been a completely different person. So I can't wait to record now. And I hope you'll let me record the peacocks.
Me, let you? Well, it's not my song, so yes, you may.
Okay, but now that you did it so beautifully, I just thought I would check with you.
Oh,
But
thank you.
we
You know,
both
I
have
went the
a
other
lot
day, I
of
went actually and looked for different versions because Carmen Bradford's going to be on the show, and she did a really beautiful um, concert with an orchestra. I mean, yeah, kind of a small orchestra, and quite beautiful. And I really admired her version because she was very loose with it. You know, she wasn't really stuck with the exact melody. You know, she was very flexible, which was nice to hear with that song. You know, I
Oh yeah,
think one of my favorite versions is Sinna Eeg. Are you familiar with her, Sinna Eeg?
I am. She's a lovely singer.
She has a really beautiful version of that
I
with an
haven't listened
orchestra.
to that.
Yeah, it's
It's
really nice.
amazing how many people have found that song. I thought it was a treasure that I didn't know anyone else knew it. And then I heard
I
Mark Murphy.
know. I know what you mean. You know, I heard it, I don't know, 8 or 9 years ago. A student sang it at a workshop, and I was like, what?
Wow.
I wanted to sing that, you know, especially the bridge is like,
The
it's
bridge,
really
the
kind of,
bridge.
yeah, I love those tension notes, you know. Oh, God, they just make my whole body just do something.
For
And,
chills.
and then, and I know Norma Winstone pretty well, the lyricist.
I know you just sang with her, and that was so beautiful.
Yeah, thank you. And she, it's just, it's quite a beautiful piece. There are some other beautiful pieces like that, like for instance, Duke Ellington's Sound of Love. I think I kind of put that in the same category. Very interesting song. You should check that out.
Write it down.
Yeah, Duke. It's called That's the title. Duke Ellington's Sound of Love. It's quite beautiful. Oh, and Sandy Cummings said Jasmelia Horn has a recording of it. Also, my friend Ingrid James. And oh, you know what? There is a Japanese singer who was a student of mine, and she went back to Japan and she made a recording with the guy, Philip Strange, who I recorded and toured with a lot.
Mhm.
And this version, I'm going to have to send you a copy of it. It's like Keith Jarrett. You're singing it with Keith Jarrett, so you can imagine, you
Oh,
know,
my
a
goodness.
space, and she's singing. She has a beautiful, gentle tone, and
That's
oh,
wonderful.
it's really beautiful. So I'll have to share that with you.
Well, it's definitely a special song. So when I called up Norma for the chart, I said, "What does it mean? Tell me the story." And it's not what I'm going to think of when I sing it, but it was really nice to hear what the person who actually wrote it. And she had the funniest thing she said. She said that she thought she couldn't write lyrics because a horn solo was like one long sentence. And so she told people she couldn't write lyrics. And then all of a sudden she realized that it just came out of her. And the Peacocks is a really great lyric, I think. Um, but it's hard to know what it means to the person who writes it. And it's also wonderful to have the opportunity, if they're alive, to call them up and say, well, what did you mean? What was that about for you? And then, of course, it's going to be about something else for me and everyone else who gets a chance to read it or play with it, play in it.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's kind of the famous. That's kind of the famous thing about the person. I have one of those sheets that you give students, with interesting little stories and quotes. And
Right.
there's one that I have that's talking about how this person, the words were, I fell down the steps and I went to the doctor, and the other person heard, something spiritual and gorgeous, and and the person who wrote this thing said, "That's fine. I don't have to have you duplicate my words exactly. Whatever you get from it is what you get from it."
Whatever happened to you that you can tell the story with our song.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
Um, let's see. Oh, I have Dina DeRose. Hey, Dina.
Oh,
So
hi. I just saw her in concert.
yeah, I had
Lovely.
her on last week or
I
a week
saw that.
ago.
I
She
want
said
to tell
Cecile
her.
McLaurin Salvant also recorded it.
Oh, I love her too. So,
What's funny is it's not actually called the Peacocks anymore. With
a
lyrics,
timeless place.
a timeless place. Yeah,
It's
but
about the third line.
everybody remembers it as the Peacocks. So
Yeah. Well, the first time I heard it, I guess, was Bill Evans. And then Stan Getz and Bill Evans did it. And then I don't even think I realized it was by Jimmy Rolls until Norma did it with him
yeah,
and did that album. So that was fun.
yeah, quite
I love
beautiful.
both of their singing. Norma and Jay are just outstanding
I
and
agree.
just get me really excited.
I agree.
By the
There's
way,
a
Jay has been announcing your show everywhere. She just loves you.
oh, she has a new record coming out, which
Yes,
I'm really looking forward to.
actually, I have them.
You have both of them?
I do.
Oh, I thought they hadn't come out yet.
It didn't come out yet. I just happened to
Yep, I
lucky
want
enough
that
to
one.
get one.
I want that one. I'm gonna have to call her up and
It's a killer. It's really
scratch
beautiful. And the other one's here too. Well, I know which one is your favorite.
it. You do?
Didn't you mention that one?
Wait, come closer. Oh, yeah.
Isn't that your favorite?
I don't know if it's my favorite. I have a lot of her CDs, but
I think I
that
have
is
about
gorgeous.
14 of them.
I know she's been very prolific.
Anyway, I
And
love
Norma too. Oh, hi, Jay.
I thought she might come by because I sent her a text. 3
It,
p.m.
it's Deja's birthday.
Oh, happy birthday.
Yeah, happy birthday.
She's
Oh, and Dina says it's on SoundCloud. Are you talking about the the Cecile version on SoundCloud? I definitely would like to hear that. Greg Karuka says hello.
Oh, Greg. He's
So
from
my volume is not hot, huh? Man, I don't know what it is lately. My volume is not hot. I really don't know.
I have noticed the longer you have equipment, the softer it gets. Have you noticed that?
Well,
Like iPads and iPhones seem to get softer as time goes by. I don't know if microphones have that problem.
yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure what's going on with my volume. I'm gonna have to test this out.
It's
Not while I'm on the show.
I don't know what they're hearing, but
I promise I will check that out later today, ladies and gentlemen. And thanks, John, for saying that. And if you hear it and it's a little better, let me know. Um, what does Dina say? Jay's new CD recorded some years ago with an Austrian pianist, Fritz Power.
that's what I just showed you. 3 for the Road.
Yeah, Three for the Road, right?
Passed away.
Yep.
And Ed Neumeister, who's brilliant on that. So,
Quite brilliant. Um, so,
so after my first concert, I decided to have a concert in my apartment, which was a CD release party. And that was the first week of December, I guess before the pandemic. I think the pandemic began on my mom's birthday, March 13th.
uh-huh.
Everybody, I think that's the last day I had a piano player over here, and it has a date on my tape. So that was the end of life as we know it.
Are you going out at all?
Not really, not really. I live in a building with a elevator, and people don't wear masks, and I'm just my husband goes out a lot, and I pretty much am waiting until it's more safe. And I'm doing a lot of Zooming and a lot of cooking. But no Netflix for me. I'm just singing and studying and teaching and doing PT. I just have not had any desire to watch TV. But I did a lot of that in my sick years. So I think that I had enough of that. I'm just using, and also the other thing about the pandemic that I think is really fun for musicians is last weekend I spent Friday night at the Village Vanguard in my pajamas. I saw my bass player on my album, Drew Grass, with Fred Hirsch and this wonderful drummer, and I can't pronounce his name, Joachim?
Michael Joachim?
No, his first name was Joachim.
Oh, his first name was Joachim or Joachim.
Joachim something. I'm not saying it right. I hate to mispronounce it, but beautiful trio. And they were there with the masks, and Drew took one of those masterful bass solos, and the mask was slipping down, and then right on the 1 second that he didn't play, he went and put the mask back on and didn't miss a beat. And I knew he was really angry at the music and the mask. It was so much fun. And then, of course, after each song, it's like one person clapping. But, we were all clapping and putting claps and sending texts and saying, "We love you. Thank you so much for the music." So I think Saturday night we went to Smalls. It hasn't been that bad for me because everything's just coming right to me. I kind of like it, but I think I'd like to go to Europe and Japan one day. So I have to keep getting better.
Yeah.
Or just keep going anyway and doing it anyway.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Probably Japan is might be relatively easy to get around. Because there's a lot of abilities to use elevators and
Mhm.
yeah. So it's yeah, because it is a lot of walking there
Yeah,
too.
I can do steps. I don't, you know, look for it, but if I have to, I can. If I can.
Yeah, yeah. Sometimes they have a lot of steps.
When I went up to do the interview before the concert,
Uh-huh.
it was up the elevator like 3 flights, and then the guy went home, and there was just an escalator. So I
Oh,
was happy it was down instead of up.
yeah, yeah. So let's talk about teaching
Mhm.
because you've done so much of it. And
Yeah,
oh, actually, first I'd actually like to play some more music.
please.
So let's see. And wow, you and I do. Bud Powell, Lonely Woman. I did not record We'll Be Together Again.
Well, we're going to have to. So when we do our concert, we know all the same songs.
Right. Bud Powell. Is that
Yeah.
cool? Or Lonely Woman too. I'd like to hear that. But
I'm
anyway,
asking you to make a donation, right?
we're going to start that. Hold on. I'm skipping the ads.
Please.
I'm sitting and think about buttermilk. I knew in another lifetime there's something round I could name, like that rest we got in the rain. The man who really showed us how to play bebop piano. Nothing will ever be the same. When I was young, I chance to do arpeggios with my fingers. How you can sing with your heart, plainly tear you apart. There's always someone there to give some special information, talking about the man. One day I saw him take a train from Copenhagen so far away, and though I never heard from him again, rememberings of a spring when music played. Let's make it a new day, don't live for the blue day. I dream a true day free from suffering and sorrow. Take a dip and listen to butterfly on a cloud just like a Buddha. Let yourself sing with your heart. Don't let pain tear you apart. There's always someone there to give some special information, talking about the man. But how? I saw him take a train from Copenhagen so far away, and though I never heard from him again, rememberings of a spring when music played. Let's make it a new day, don't live for the blue day. I dream a true day free from suffering and sorrow. Take a dip and listen to bud. I'm there on a cloud just like a Buddha. Let yourself sing with your heart. Don't let pain tear you apart. There's always someone there to give some special information, talking about the man. Bud Powell.
Nice, really great. One thing I notice about your singing is that it's it's consistent sound, which is like it's like a horn player, for instance. You would have the sound consistent, the notes would be changing, and the groove is still there, but but it's not broken up sound. It's consistent sound, which is really wonderful.
Thank you. I think I know what you mean, like legato kind of.
Kind of legato, yeah. And it sounds good. It sounds really good. Yeah, and your tone was great. Your swinging was great. The words were a little different than what I sang. Where did
Well,
you get those words?
the story on all the Chick tunes are that when I came to do the album with Claire, I met John Patitucci, and he was going to do our album, and he got called by Chick Corea. So um, he came to Washington, and he called me, and he said, "Would you like to come to the show and meet Chick?" And I said, "I would love to." And he gave me all these songs, like 10 or 12 songs.
Oh,
His exact charts. I have them here. They're really old now, but and they were all, the lyrics were all by Tony Cohan.
yeah.
So when I was doing the copywriting and the IRC codes, if anybody knows what that is, I happened to find Tony's address, and I wanted to make sure it was okay with him if I recorded it, because of course Chick gave them to me.
Yeah.
And we became friends, and we started writing back and forth, and he didn't know that any of his songs came out. So I'm sure that you should send him your song too, if those are his lyrics.
Yeah, well, I made my record a long time ago, and I was in communication with him at that time.
Okay, so
But maybe it was when did you make that one?
1987, but I got in touch with him in 2019.
Oh, I see. So
So
19
I just found an email and I wrote to him, and then he wrote me back. I just sent him one song. He said, "Send me another, send me another, send me another, send me the whole thing. Oh, thank you for doing my songs. Here's a quote." It was like, "Oh, yay, I love you too." And then he started talking about he wished he could change some of the lyrics to Star Dancer. And I knew exactly the lyrics that he would have changed. It was just like, I would have changed them too. But it's a little late.
He was a good writer, actually.
I love his
He
writing.
wrote, didn't he write all the lyrics to which chick music? There was a whole album of chick music that Tony wrote the lyrics to with what's her name singing? Oh God.
Laura Purim?
Yeah, yeah.
They're not his. They're not Tony's. They're all.
Light as a feather.
Yeah, that's not.
Are you sure?
Yeah, it's. I'm trying to think of the name because I know who it is. No, Tony wrote all of the songs that I got. I just got the whole collection.
Oh.
So those. I'm just trying to think of the name because I love Flora, and I have all those records. Oh gosh. One lyricist that did all of the Return to Forever and all
Let's see. I'm looking. I'm curious. Let's see. Return. Oh no, light as a feather, not return to forever. Light
That's in the real book, isn't it?
no, I'm talking about the record. Light as a feather. Chick Corea. Yeah. So light as a feather. Let's see. Looking at Wikipedia. Oh, Neville Potter.
That's who it was. I knew it was an N.
Yes.
That's what happens. You get one letter, and then
Right. Neville.
hopefully somebody else helps you out.
Right. Now I remember. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, that's who it was. But all of the ones that I did are all Tony's. Out of I think there's 5 or 6 songs of chicks in there.
That on your album?
Yeah, it's pretty much my Chicoria album with 2 Ralph Towner songs and one from Ellington. Yeah.
Oh, let's see. Lonely Woman wasn't that, but The Silence of a Candle?
That's Ralph Towner. And he wrote the lyrics to that too.
Oh.
That's a really special song.
Bud Powell was, those were Tony's lyrics.
Yeah.
Lonely Woman. Which lyrics did you do of Lonely Women?
Lonely Woman, I only know of one lyric. It's Margot Guryan, Guryan. Not sure how to say it. Fabulous lyric.
Oh, I sang. Wait, are we talking about which Lonely Woman?
I'm talking about Ornette Coleman because there's the Horace Silver one.
Okay, Yeah, I did the Horace Silver one.
I'm learning that now. We just love the same stuff. It's unbelievable. You know who also loves all the stuff I love is Rosanna Vitro. She was going to come by. I did my first album, Listen Here, and then the second I finished putting it out, she did an album, Listen Here, with the same song. And then I did the album with Claire, and then she did an album of all Claire's music. And I just met her on Facebook too. Everybody that loves the same songs, it's just amazing because
Well,
they're
yeah, we're the same tribe, all of us, you know.
the tribe. It's a
Yeah,
good
um,
to be in.
yeah, it's really, really great. Yeah, well,
These are really
so whose lyrics are you doing of Lonely Woman, though? I mean, of the Horace Silver,
um,
because there's Leonard Feather, and then there's Horace's.
Horace's. I'm doing the ones I got them from Jay because Jay did this.
Well, you should check out Leonard Feather's lyrics too. They're
I would love to hear that.
beautiful.
I
And
love
it's funny because I when I started singing Lonely Women, you know, many years ago, I found Leonard's, and Bob Mays. I don't know if you ever knew Bob Mays. He was a bass player,
I did.
and he was playing with Horace out here.
Yes.
So Horace called me and he asked me, didn't really ask me. He basically told me that I should be singing his lyrics instead. And, you know, I was so, I don't know what I was in those days, but I actually told him that I preferred Leonard's.
Oh,
As you can imagine, that probably went over really well. But
you know how you feel.
and Horace actually did write some pretty good lyrics, but you tell me which you prefer because Leonard's are really quite beautiful.
Well, since I'm working on it, I could go either way.
Yeah, I'm going to make myself a note to send you the lyrics so you can just check them out. You know?
There's actually a third Lonely Woman
Oh,
from Jay, and I'm trying to think of who it's by.
not the Ornette Coleman, or I mean
Yeah,
somebody like who wrote
actually
the
a
music.
third one, and I can't remember who it is. I'm sure somebody will know.
Okay, Lonely Woman. Yeah, it's cool. And then you have We'll Be Together Again, which
Is my standard.
yeah. Now, who wrote that again?
That's by Carl Fisher's the lyrics, and gee, I have to check. That's
Will Fisher, I remember.
Frankie Lane.
Frankie
How
Lane.
could I get that? I had this record.
Wait,
when I-
Frankie Lane wrote
Yes,
the
right.
music?
Isn't that something?
That's,
Or-
that's very amazing.
Maybe
I actually thought Carl Fisher wrote
Carlton
both.
Fisher wrote the music and Frankie Lane wrote the words.
That makes a little more sense.
It totally does because it's second, and they always put the composer first. I
And
think.
what about Celeste?
Now, Celeste is by Ralph Towner, and lyrics are by Norma again. So,
Oh, okay.
but
And the Gin?
the Gins, Tony and Chick,
And Contessa?
and Contessa's Tony and Chick. I think that's Tony's favorite, and it's probably my favorite if I had to pick. It's kind of hard to pick.
I think we should listen to at least a little of it, don't you?
I think we should.
Yeah,
Thanks for
a
suggesting.
little bit of it anyway. I mean,
Hey, so this is a super.
My goodness. Come on, get off. Skip ads, thank you.
Smile for me, my Contessa. I come to you again. The moon and the night, the spring and the perfume in the sky is as it was before, my Contessa. Soft your eyes in the starlight. How many lives ago I ran to your side, our hands intertwined in such a garden, remembering us now. Our bodies lay chandelier sway. I heard you say you knew me once a long, long time ago, and before that, over and over again with me, Contessa. Lift the veil away, the pain and regret, where we endlessly met has left our garden. We're lovers once again, just as we were then. But this time I can see who you are. Memory was a dream. Now your eyes, it seems, shine clearly, and at last I can love you as I always do. You confess I
Wow. So beautiful. That's really, wow, quite a song.
I love it. It's a pretty song.
And tell us again who's in the band on this recording?
So it's Mark Copeland is on piano.
Oh, Mark Copeland. He's, I don't have many favorite piano players. He is one of them.
He's definitely one of mine too. Um, he lived here
Oh,
originally. He's not from here. I think he's from Philadelphia, but he lived here a long time. And he did my first demo in 1978 with Terry Plumeri on bass and Mike Smith, the same drummer on this record, who was on everything I ever did, all my gigs.
beautiful player.
He passed away, unfortunately, but I got to work with him my whole career. So I don't know. I'm looking for a drummer now. Michael Steffens.
There you go.
He's not on stage, but he's willing to come maybe for something. We'll hope so. Anyway, and then on bass is Drew Grass. And Drew and I have been friends a long time. We did some bass and voice gigs. In fact, we did the first Jewish Community Center Jazz Festival in Baltimore. That was a disaster, but it was bass and voice, and it was one of these things where there was so much reverb in the room that by the time I heard my part come back to me, I was already 4 notes ahead. And so it just was bouncing off the wall and coming back, and it was just bass and voice, which you really have to hear the pitch to do that well, because you're also hearing the whole band and how you're going to just get your part. And that was crazy. And so it's Mark, Drew, and Mike Smith on drums. And then David Kane is on 2 of the songs. And
David plays what?
he's a pianist also.
Okay.
And he's also on my first album. And then my second album has Claire and his band. So when I did that in California at the Salsa Picante band, that was quite a thrill.
Yeah, well, Claire.
So when I came out the way that I met Claire was kind of fun. I did Morning on my first album, and I was a big fan of the 2+2 singers and all those Claire Fisher albums that were so fantastic. And I was looking for a record company, and I sent it to about 10 different record companies, and Discovery was one of the ones that got back to me. And so Claire was driving on the highway, and he heard my song, and he didn't know that I knew his song and that anyone else had recorded it. And so he said something to Albert Marks, and he said, "Oh, she's on our label. Do you want to do a record with her?" And he says, "Yes, please."
Oh.
I happen to already know 11 of his songs. So bang, I already had the songs. And then the funniest part was that since I did everything in a different key than he did, he used the electric piano and just used the transposer button.
Who would have imagined?
Who would have imagined? And in the middle of my project, guess who calls? Prince calls and says, could you please do the sweetening of my album? So that was my birthday, and my birthday
Wait
present.
a minute. What does that mean?
That means that he did horns and strings that were made to go behind a Prince song, and they call it sweetening. And it really takes like a guitar and voice and turns it into a mass production. It won a Grammy. I think it was one of his
So
first.
I'm sorry, Prince called
Prince
you
called
or
me.
Claire?
Claire.
Okay.
I was there rehearsing for the album, and we also did Le Café 2 nights with John Patitucci. And so he called him to do that, and it was my birthday. So he said, well, your birthday present is you get to come to the session. So in the morning, they had all the horn players, and then in the afternoon, they had all the string players, and in between, we had lunch, and it was just a pretty phenomenal birthday. And I'll never forget how at one point he made everybody switch sides of the room. So every instrument had to switch. And it sounded completely better. And I just didn't even understand how he even knew to do that. But it was
Wow.
amazing.
That's wild. That's really
And
interesting.
then I had a big night at the Vine Street, and then I flew home, and I came back a few months later and did Le Cafe again with somebody else. It was just a lot of fun. And then I pretty much didn't get back there yet, but I may
Well,
one day.
regarding Claire, were you at all intimidated? Because Claire was a very
Claire was, it was so fun.
intimidating person, you know.
I was really afraid when I met him because I didn't know what was going to happen. And when I got to his door for the first day for the rehearsal, he got all dressed up. And I'm in jeans and a t-shirt, and he's like wearing a tie, and he looked so handsome. He opens the door like we're going on a date or something and lets me into his home. It's like I'm underdressed, and I just know he was going to think it was such a big deal that I came over. And so we got together every day, and we had dinner every night, and we would drink wine, and he would jump up on the piano in any restaurant and go, come here, Lisa, do this song. Let's work out this arrangement. And he started playing Love for Sale one night, and we were drinking wine, and he did this thing where he was so excited about this arrangement, he made it the harmonic rhythm go like 40 times slower than it should, and I'm just going la, whoa, come on. And then finally it goes into Latin, and then I do the whole thing again the same way, but it's got all the percussion players and all the layers of the things that he laid down that are like all his records. My record sounds exactly like his record, except that but it was a blast.
Wow. Well, he really
We had a lot of
took to you
fun.
like he took to you like a duck takes to water, man. He was like
We were like having so much
interesting.
fun. And then his daughter was 18 at the time.
Hmm.
And so she decided she wanted to take singing lessons with me. So I was teaching her.
Oh,
They had kittens in the middle of this thing. There were like 10 kittens in the kitchen. There was a lot of action in this house. I never went upstairs, but there was a lot going on. So there were 2 pianos. There was like this beautiful Yamaha. That was the sweetest Yamaha spinet that I ever heard in my life. And then, of course, there was the grand piano, and then there was an electric piano. And it was just a lot of fun. I think his son still lives there, Brent.
yeah. We used to see them play at a place called the $2 Bills in Hollywood, and yeah, and truthfully, I always felt a little bad for his sons because he was very hard on them in the band, you know, like in public, you know, and it was just like, oh gosh. But he also once called me because why did he give me the lyrics to Pensativa? I'm not sure. Maybe I reached out to him and he gave me his. Actually, his lyrics are beautiful, but the only problem that I ever had with it was the melody to Pensativa to me is kind of a happy melody, and the words are not happy.
I did that on my record too. The
Well,
hardest part
we
of
have
it,
to share our
I'm
Pensativas too.
maybe we're married, we just don't know. Pensativa, the hardest part is that it starts on the lowest note in my entire range. Yes.
Yeah,
But I love the words to that. I really
yeah.
The one that I wasn't that thrilled with the words was Gaviota, and I wanted to do something else on that. But I just love the music to that, so I did Gaviota, Minor Sights, which doesn't have a lyric, so I just blah blah blah, you know, blah blah blah, and Pensativa, and God, what are his other songs? I have to look.
So, which record is this, Lisa, that you're speaking of?
That's this.
And the title of it is that the
Touch of the Rare.
sorry,
Touch of the Rare.
Much of the Rare,
Touch.
Touch of the Rare.
Which is a very interesting song that was written by June Besant. I'm not quite sure where she is anymore, but she and her husband wrote that song.
Yeah.
But we did Gaviota, Serenidade, that's my favorite on this album. So that was an interesting thing. It was a instrumental, and I was so in love with it. And Claire called up a guy, Daniel, I'm trying to think how to say his last name, Citrinowitz. That's not right. But he wrote the lyrics overnight. And then he came over and he wrote them out for me and explained what they meant. And it's a very sexy love story and very beautiful, lovely words. So I had one song in Portuguese and one in Spanish. So when Claire got called to do the Prince thing, all of a sudden he wasn't available to get together every day. But I had it on a cassette, so I would drive over. I rented this thing called Rent a Wreck. Did you ever do that?
I remember that.
And I
Rent a Wreck.
beach, and while I was driving, the steering wheel came off. And I think I should probably make some money because I did that for like 7 weeks, Rent a Wreck, and I kept trading them in because things would go wrong. But anyway, I'd go to the beach and I would learn the Spanish and learn the Portuguese and, you know, just go back and forth because those were the ones I didn't know before I came. And so by the time I went into the recording, we had different percussion players for the different fields. So Ron Powell came in for the Brazilian, and this guy Machito,
Yeah, Machito. Yep.
he played on the salsa things. And what the guy, they were laughing because they said my Spanish sounded like Portuguese and my Portuguese sounded like Spanish, because I was just doing it to make it sound as good as I could, you know, to get the sound, because I'm a sound person, I'm a colors person. And so at the end, they were just kind of laughing because it all sounded like one language, because it was the Lisa version of Portuguese and Spanish. But I did know what I was singing about. And the other, Novios, is the Spanish song, and that was written by Barbara Ransom with Claire. And I think most of them were done by the singers that the 2+2 people. And they came over for rehearsal when I was there, and they saw me rehearse, and I heard them rehearse.
Uh-huh.
I think I'm Facebook friends with the soprano.
Is it Darlene Coldenhoven in it?
The highest voice, the most
Yeah.
beautiful high notes. Yes, her. And I met her that day, and the whole group came over, and that was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And then ended up being the bass player on the album because John had to rush off and go to Chick's gig. So we switched bass players in the middle of the stream. We had Jeff Berlin came in and played on that, and Andy Simpkins came in on one song. And we didn't use that song.
Oh, that's too bad.
But I have it on the cassette.
Well, Andy Simpkins, I remember
Sarah Vaughan's bass.
I actually fell off of my chair
You're-
to him in Chadney's. I went to hear Dave Mackay and Andy, and I forget the drummer's name. He moved to San Francisco. He was a small African American man, and he was the one of the best ever drummers. Mike, you probably know who I'm talking about, but I literally fell off my chair when I was listening to Andy.
Okay.
You know, I found Touch of the Rare on YouTube. Um, could we listen to a little bit? There's Morning, Minor Sights, there's Pensativa, Novios, Invitation.
Why don't you try the one I was just talking about, Serenidade?
Let's see if I can find that.
Portuguese.
Oh no, that's the song Touch of the Rare. Invitation. How do you spell it? Maybe I can.
That's it. You're on it. It's right there.
Right
That's,
here?
you're on it.
Cool.
De passado que jamais me pertenceu, sem cor tão sem razão, sentir movimento, mar efêmero. Perfeitos pra viver grande amor, assim sem vacilar, banhada pela lua, nos imaginando e a
Such a beautiful Brazilian song, not written by a Brazilian.
By a gringo.
Yeah. Quite beautiful.
Really nice melody.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Yeah, and you sounded like the real thing.
Thanks.
Yeah. Channeling Mike Steffen says channeling early Gal Costa. That's true. She sounds like the real thing. Yeah, and Claire's playing is so beautiful.
It is lovely. I love his music too. I really, it seemed very natural to go from Claire Fisher to a Chick Corea album. The next step is really, I'm not sure. I know two of the songs. I don't know really what's going to happen. I have a whole bunch of things that I love. Some of them I started long ago and never recorded them. And some of them are new. And I'm working with a piano player and I sing them 3 hours a day.
You
And
sing 3 hours a day?
I sing 3 hours a day.
Wow, good for you.
In between, I have to lie on my stomach to go the opposite way. And that
Say
kind
that
of,
again.
in between, every 30 minutes, I have to go lie down on my stomach. So that if I'm bent over, it undoes it. It kind of stretches me out the other way. And then I come back and I do, it's like a leg. So I do a 30-minute leg. And then this is the thing I worked out with my physical therapist. So when I did the concert, of course, I couldn't do that.
Oh.
But if I do it every other day, I guess it's okay. I can have my special days. Anyway, um,
Yes. You were laughing because?
I forgot.
Oh, I was talking to somebody yesterday and she said, oh, yeah, right, I remember. It was my student. She's a little older than me, and she's a therapist. And so she was, she was saying that when we get to be middle age, it's not that we're getting senile or losing our memory. It's just our focus actually changes. When we're young, we have this kind of focus, and when we grow older, we have this kind of focus, and then older. So she made it sound so nice that I forget shit.
You forget shit. A lot of times I'll have the first name and I'll wait till my husband has the last name. It's like together we can make
Oh,
it
that's
sound.
nice. I have forgotten my husband's name actually.
That's
But I was introducing him once, and I was like, it
what's
was out of my, and he saw that I forgot it. And he said, Gary. And then what makes it even worse is my first husband was Gus. So if I say Gus instead of Gary, I always say, uh-oh, the G word. But he has a similar problem because the woman he lived with before me was named Catherine. So,
oh dear,
yeah, so.
like Michael's way.
Mike said scat. Now I'm not sure. Should we talk about scatting, or I didn't hear any scatting on your record. Do you scat?
Um, sometimes when the spirit moves me.
Good. Okay, Mike, that was it. Scat.
Yeah. On my birthday, he called me up and he scatted on my iPhone. And on Valentine's Day, he called me up and scatted again. So I think that's why he's giving me a scat message.
I see.
He's a scatter himself. He's a scatting drummer.
Mike Stuffins. We
And
had a good time.
those
Good
scats.
hang.
He's a good.
Also in January, we were both in New York at the Jazz Congress, and he and I and Michael Dion went and had lunch together. And it was so much fun. We hadn't seen each other for so long. you know, it's really amazing. I've definitely thought about it because of this program, but it's it's. You said something in the beginning of this, which kind of goes along with that. I forget. I'm trying to remember what you said, but it's just that. Well, I guess you were saying something about music is your life, or something like that. Anyway, it's music is really all of our lives. It's not.
Like
It's
a
you
religion.
can't. Yeah, it is a religion, and it's like, but every single person on the planet is touched by music, and um, so that's kind of why it drives me a little bit of why it drives me crazy when governments don't support it. It's like, what do you mean you don't think it's important? It's
Or that they
like
take it
air.
to the
It's
system. Yeah.
yeah, and so that's part of why that drives me crazy. But um, it's. I feel so honored and happy and full talking to everybody about their unique um, experience and surrounding of music, and especially people, like yourself who came up and really like did a lot of substantial things, and yeah, it's very inspirational, very inspirational.
You are inspirational as well.
Oh, thanks.
You gave yourself a full-time job to serve all of us in the music community and all the students, and everybody's talking about it, and everybody's now starting to do it with their people. And I just think it's the best part of this thing that we're going through that might end up saving our lives as far as the climate and some other things. I'm hoping that something better will come of all this.
Yeah. You're
Definitely.
right, though. It is really nice to hear everybody, like our friend Sunny Wilkinson, who was on at 11 o'clock today, and she's going to be on every 2 weeks. And she's wonderful to listen to because she's very sunny, like her name, and
Yeah.
knows great people. She's a really great talker and
And you
interviewer.
happen to know such wonderful people. Every time I don't know who they are, and I do know who about half of them are, but the other times when I don't know who they are, I'm blown away by just hearing what they have to say. So it's really a great time of day to be having something musical to turn to.
Yeah, it's
That
neat. Yesterday's conversation I loved with Mark Isham.
last night, that was what a great musician.
And
Ah,
he's got a name that maybe it's known by musicians in the industry, but for the general public, his name is not that known. But his music
isn't
is
everything on the
yeah,
movie?
so many movies that we know.
I didn't even realize that until I saw the show, The Accountant and all those other ones.
The Accountant, right? And a great movie. I watch it every time I see it come up.
Well, yeah, and I didn't really. I guess I didn't realize that it was him. But a lot of things have the movies have been made more beautiful by him. Just great guy.
I really enjoy speaking to film composers. They just
And I think that's fantastic.
they have a kind of a special point of view. Well, I also just composers in general, but like um, John DeVersa, he's not a film composer, I don't think, but he composes for his large group, and he has that kind of point of view too. Very kind of geniusy.
Mhm. I like that Terrence Blanchard, who does I think he did Homeland, and now he's
Yeah,
Harry
yeah,
Wilson, and it sort of reminds me of Miles, like
yeah.
that kind of blue period. And it's sort of you hear it and you just feel like you're right back there in the 50s or something. It's a really nice
Isn't
time.
that great?
My favorite, the Miles ballads and the Round Midnight, that period, those
I
Miles.
think Mark did that movie Home, and that was featuring sax player. Anybody who saw that yesterday can help me out. It was featuring, one of the heavy bebop players, and the group was Billy Higgins and bass player was Don Littleton. Don, is it Don? Don or Jeff? Jeff Littleton. They're brothers. Don is the percussionist and drummer. Oh, and that also had a backdrop like you were listening to the old jazz, and it was that music really had this particular life and effect, didn't it? It just
It's sort of like impressionist paintings or something. That it
yeah,
was a period that was so yummy and really influenced me. And I think it's also a period that made me want to sing those songs desperately. All the ones that you heard Miles play first, and then maybe Sarah Vaughan sing or Ella.
Yeah. When I was in college, I was listening to a lot of Miles. That was and the kind of cool period of him. That was my favorite. In fact, every morning I would get up and put on, I don't know, around midnight or I don't know. Every single morning I'd wake up to whatever it was. It was great. Yeah. So Miles was just
I love Porgy and Bess, all the Gil Evans things. Yeah. I used to try to make my vibrato sound like Miles. And
yeah.
I really spent a lot of time working on my breathing and my belly muscles to try to get a vibratoless sound and hold it and not let it go flat. And I've heard some other singers do it, and I really wanted to be able to do it. And I think a lot of classical singers sometimes think that vibrato is a positive thing, but I think it's a stylistic choice. And I've heard people say, well, why don't you have vibrato? Or why do you have so much vibrato? They don't say that to me ever, but some people have a very big vibrato, and maybe sometimes it gets worse as they age, bigger, maybe not worse, because that's a judgment, but bigger. I really like vibrato singing, kind of like Paul Desmond or Eileen Krall. Irene Krall, I mean. I just, it sounds more like talking to me. And I love the way Miles would just hold a note and there wouldn't be vibrato. He would cut it off before it started. So I think the way that my singing teachers taught me to get that, because of course they didn't understand why I wanted that, but they were willing to work with me on it. And it was a matter of just pushing air in a way and not letting it get to the vibrato part. And then when it was about to get to that, you took an inhalation as an ending. And you pretty much were out of breath anyway, but that inhalation would keep it from going flat or having one of those Nancy Wilson endings that go, ah, how she would do that, which she's one of my favorites also. But that was something that I found in myself that I had to then dissect and get rid of because I didn't want to do that.
I'm curious. Can you show us ending with an inhalation?
Yeah, sure. If you're just going, ah,
Oh, okay. So you
just inhale to instead of releasing and maybe closing your vocal cords or clicking, you inhale, and that is the release, and that's a silent release, so you don't get a click or any. If you get a silent breath, you don't even get a big sound.
yeah,
Did you
yeah.
hear that? I don't know if my microphone was able to pick that up.
No, definitely we heard that. Yeah. Actually, Dina a while ago had asked if you had talked about your early years of learning to sing, and she wanted to know about your learning of vocal technique.
Yeah. Well, I started at 13, and one of the things that was, I think, wrong was the singing teacher said, you can't start till you're 13. You can take piano lessons until you're 13 because your voice isn't developed yet. So I don't do that. I would take anybody if they're 5. If they have a voice and they want a singing lesson, I'm willing to give them one. I think that's ridiculous that you have to wait for your voice to change. I mean, your voice changes all the time as you grow. Anyway, so I had a voice teacher in the beginning, and she could play jazz.
Huh.
And so I would go and she would put my hand on her stomach, and she would show me how she would move her stomach in as she breathed and how that would give her the support to get the volume and get the pitches right. And then she would just play, and I would learn all the standards. And I didn't know that was going to be my career. I just thought that was what she was giving me. I had the Broadway show books. It wasn't the real book yet, but it was just the Broadway shows. And then when I got to college, of course, I had more serious training, and I had to do classical. But I think I sounded like a jazz singer even then. So when I was in college and I had every semester there was another voice teacher, which was really disheartening because if you find somebody, you want to study with them as long as they're alive. I mean, I think that's a good relationship with a teacher. So every semester it was somebody else, and I felt like they were going to ruin my voice. And then I'd go on the weekends and sing with the band, and that wasn't at all what I was learning. It was kind of the opposite, and I was getting so confused. So I went to New York, and I met Melissa Manchester, and she said, "You got to go to this voice teacher I go to, and you also have to go to the theory teacher so you can do the commercials." So I came up to New York. I left the University of Maryland, much to my parents' dismay, without a degree. And I went up and I started studying privately with David Collier-Soren and Helen Hobbs Jordan, who was the sight singing and theory teacher. So it was one private lesson and then 5 rhythm classes. Each night you would go and you would do they would play music and you would just write out what the notes were, and everything was speed up, read fast, get everything down really fast. And then you get a private theory lesson, and I'd take about 3 voice lessons a week. And I did that for about a year, and then I went on the road. And so then, of course, I lost my voice, as we all do when we sing 6 nights a week, 6 hours a night. That's not right. But that was the job, and I was in my 20s, so I did it. And by the 6th night, you changed the key, like down a 5th, so you could get to the high note. Rough, but that's what the 20s are for. I was just in a van with a band, and I just changed bands every month or so, trying to get with the best players I could. But I was in New York, and my first band was called the New York Rubber Rock Band. It's embarrassing, but that's what it was called. I still have the picture. And that was the first time I got this hairdo. I seem to have now without my hairdresser, anyway. So then I started studying voice with someone else who's very famous. His name was Fred Wilkerson, and he was Roberta Flack's teacher in Washington. And that was when I learned about the Me Too movement, because he was a very awful man and very crude, as was David Collier-Soren, in that way that you would say, oh, they're my singing teacher, and if they're making me do that, that shouldn't be, that seems a little weird to me, like sexual. Why is that exercise looking like that? And why is he so close to me? And why am I not saying anything? Because I'm too scared, because I'm 19 or 20. And nobody ever said anything about that. But then the Me Too movement happened, and I thought, that's what that was. I mean, it wasn't rape, but it was like really inappropriate lessons. And that was the famous teacher. Everybody who studied with him was a major star. So that was why I came. I used to wait in his kitchen while Barry Manilow had his voice lesson, or Ben Farine, or Liza Minnelli. And I thought, gee, why is he acting this way when I'm taking my lesson? And so then I switched to somebody else. And but I got that technique down. That was some pretty good technique. It was all about belting, and somebody was on your show and they were doing the exercise that I remember from him that went, oh, that really resonated in my microphone. I hope that didn't break anyone's ears, but there's a little vocal technique for you. That's a great exercise in a parking lot when there's lots of reverb. My voice is so huge. Throw this around. But yes, I've taken lessons so many times. And so after Fred Wilkerson, his name was Wilkie, he had his protege became my next teacher and one of my favorite technique teachers. And I studied with her until I left again the city. And her name was McLean Bosfield, and I met her through Ned. Ned found her, and he was studying with her. And then I met her, and we got very, very close. And I studied with her till she moved to Mexico. And I also had a few singing lessons with Joseph Shambalala, talking to Dina about the different experiences I had. And he's the guy who started Ladysmith Black Mambazo. And he gave a course at the Omega Institute for Holistic Studies that I went into in one summer. And there were a whole bunch of us, and he taught us how to sing Zulu. And it was just like one of these 3-day courses that are in the summer, and it's all day and all night, and his wife was there. And we all learned to sing these songs that were on the record. And then we got on the stage and sang with, he was there and his wife was there, and we all sang these songs. And I learned so much from him, as I did from Guru Mai, who was somebody I went to sing for in India. And I heard Ann Hampton Calloway on your show talking about her. And we do have that in common. So she's a lovely guru who is in India and also in New York. And they flew me out there to sing for her, and we had the same birthday. So that was another big birthday for me. The one with Claire, with the LA, the Hollywood birthday, and then the Indian in the Monsoon's birthday, where on my birthday I got to sing for the guru. And then they just brought in people from all over the world, and this concert went on from 10 o'clock in the morning for 48 hours nonstop, just 3 songs each, and people from all over the world, magic. And the MC was Lulu and her son from To Serve With Love.
Oh.
I'm giving up my age there, right? But that was a lot of fun too. And I stayed in India for about 4 months and just did meditation and chanting, and took courses with the guru. So as long as I was in India, I thought I would just, she said, please stay. And I said, oh, how long? Okay, my pleasure.
And you were
So I didn't talk for about 7 days, and they had a song called the No Ego Course. And you weren't allowed to talk, but you were allowed to pray and meditate and chant. So only singing. That was interesting, because I'm a big talker.
Yeah,
That was
interesting. Yeah.
7 days of that, and you do see the blue pearl. And that's kind of the thing in your third eye that people talk about, the spirit, the spiritual spot. That was really amazing. And then when I was in India, I had a chance, the guru asked me if I would teach some children. So she took about 50 little kids and put them in a room with me, and I didn't know what to do with them. And they didn't speak English. They spoke all different languages. And I just started making some sounds, and everybody started singing, and 2 hours went by, and we had a great time. I don't know what they learned, but they were singing, so I know I did the job.
Yeah,
But each time I had a great teaching experience. I actually have a picture here. When I went to China, these are these singers that, that's me without any hair. And this is Bob Hallahan. Yeah. And so the teacher there was at the concert, and I said, I would love to give a workshop. I like giving workshops. And he said, come to my home. So we got in a cab, and it took about 3 hours to get to this guy's home. And it cost $3 for 3 hours in a cab. And then
he remembers that.
He waited there for us as we gave a 2-hour workshop, the piano player and I, in this guy's home. And then he drove us to the American Embassy, where we then did a concert with Alan Alda. I have a picture of that. And it was just, one of those amazing trips. But I gave this workshop there, and they didn't have an interpreter. So everybody only spoke Chinese. And it was the greatest thing that ever happened, because you realized you didn't need anything but music. So without saying one word, I explained jazz by singing Our Love Is Here to Stay 10 different ways. And they went, what are you doing? Oh my God. And then I said, could you sing for me? And they each went around, and everybody sang. Every piece of music had the government stamped on it from Russia. So they couldn't even sing something unless it was stamped by the government. It's like, you can't pick your own material? It's like, think about that. How many songs have you picked over the 50 years you've been singing? Like thousands of songs that you got to pick because you liked them. Well, they just had the ones to choose from that were stamped by the government. That horrified me. And also, you couldn't decide to become a singer. You had to be selected in a communist country to be a singer. That was, I realized how lucky we were to be able to make that choice. So I gave this workshop and they each sang, and I never heard so much passion and such talent in my life. And they didn't even get the concept of music being a religious experience because they don't even understand the concept of God. But they sure sing it like they do. So they might not associate it with that concept, but it was music in its most beautiful form. And then the interpreter that I got friendly with, she sang some folk songs in Chinese into my tape recorder. And that's one of the most precious things I brought back with me, was that. And her name was Wei Wei. And she was a beautiful girl and a singer also.
Well, it really comes to mind that you've been very adventurous and brave.
I've also been very lucky and blessed to meet some amazing people.
Yeah, but also a lot of people wouldn't say, oh, the guy says, "Hey, let's go to my house. It's 3 hours away. You're in India," and some people would say, "No, I don't think so."
That's good. I said, bring the piano player with me for protection. They wouldn't even let me get into a cab by myself. Everything, we had 2 big trailway buses when we were there, because we were there with a dance troupe, and I was there with a Howard University big band.
Oh.
That was who I was singing with. And so it was like 2 buses full of people. And they didn't let us, like, there was this one point where we were going to a little American shopping place to buy some things for our friends, or our parents, little gifts or whatever. And there was a car accident, and they made a right turn and they ran away, so we couldn't see anything that was negative. They wanted everything to be spectacular. The food was spectacular and the music was spectacular. And if anything was wrong, they didn't want us to see it. Because we were the first people to go since the revolution. The first, as they had heard, since 1957 or something.
Yeah.
Through the year. But it was a real big thing. And the reason that I went was there was a contest on the radio. And I was just listening to the radio and said, want to go to China or Bangkok? Come down to DCU and sing. And I live next door. So I called up my band. I said, could we go try out for this trip? And they said yes. And then they didn't pick me. They picked the Howard University Big Band because they wanted a big band. So the Howard University Big Band said to me, would you like to be our singer in China? And the guys had just auditioned to go with me. And I said, do you mind if I go? And they said, please go. So I went, and I just sang I was able to bring a piano player who knew my songs. And then, of course, I had to get big band charts. I just borrowed some from Mike Karate, one of my most favorite arrangers, who now lives in Phoenix. But he was the Airman of Note arranger and quite a spectacular jazz arranger. And I got to sing with the Baltimore Symphony, and he did Round Midnight for me for the Baltimore Symphony. And I don't know if you know this, but when you rehearse with them, and if they want to applaud, they take their bows and they hit them on the ground and they applaud that way. And that's what they did when they heard this beautiful arrangement my Karate did. They were applauding his arrangement by knocking their bows on the ground. That's so beautiful. And that was just a rehearsal. And it's kind of, I'm sorry.
We have a question from Taylor Hatch. You're kind of talking about it right now, but he said, was there ever a spiritual lesson you once had or an epiphany in your life that helped you in developing your musical sound?
Yes. And it was in India. And it was an amazing moment. I had headphones on, and they had these gardens, and it was snow. It was the monsoons in June. So it was raining the entire month that I was, 3 months that I was there. It was just raining. And so I had headphones on, and I went into the garden. They had all the different gods and goddesses and little flowers around them. And so I went and I was singing Amazing Grace, and I was going to each god and goddess and singing to them in the rain. And I had been meditating and like chanting for a long time. So I guess I was in a different headspace. And all of a sudden I got that epiphany of how life made sense to me and how music made sense to me. It was as if I saw clearly for 1 second what everything meant in life, and then it was over. It was like a 3-second thing. And then I came back from India, and I just felt like I really understood why I was singing, why I was alive, everything. And then I was driving one day over a bridge to go into Virginia from Washington, and I had a moment that was like a backflash of that moment. And it really had to do with knowing that I had to sing. And it had to do with what I was going to sing and how spiritual it was going to be, and why I was singing in bars versus churches, and where I wanted the music, and whether I wanted to sing for people who were drunk versus people who were worshiping. And I think I got a lot of answers in that 3 minutes or whatever it was that I felt a musical epiphany. I also felt singing for the guru was amazing. And when I finished singing, I went to bow, and I had these crystals on, and they all broke, and they spilled all over the floor. It was just like this kind of weird magical moment. And all these little children came jumping on the stage, and they're all grabbing them to take them. And then I turned around, and the guru handed me this beautiful amethyst necklace and 2 scarves. And she just gave them to me, and she touched me on the head with a peacock feather. And that was called Shaktipat. And it was like a spiritual blessing. And that was amazing, amazing musical and spiritual moment for me. I hope that's of help and an answer to Taylor's question.
He asks that question. You know, he has. I think he understands that there's a lot of spiritual perceptions in what we do. And
singing with records. I used to always sing with Aretha's Amazing Grace album with James Cleveland and the orchestra. Do you know the one I mean? The double album.
Yeah.
I just would put that on and be part of the choir, and I think that let me know that I was doing the right thing.
Yeah.
And it didn't matter if I was really gigging, as long as I was singing, as long as I had that connection. So if it wasn't with an audience, it was with the students. I always managed to find a way to get my singing in there. And now I don't really need to fit it in, because it's all I'm going to do until I'm done. That's my mission. I think yours too. And I like that you're producing and curating and all those other things that you're adding to your gifts that you can share with everybody. I've done a little producing too. I love to produce my students. And I've, of course, been the producer of my records, and that's been a great learning experience. And of course, it's always nice to be in charge of your own record and how it ends up sounding versus when you do it with somebody else and then you just leave, and whatever happens, you just have to say, okay, that's what that was.
Yeah. I think it's nice I like to be in control of my singing in recordings, but I think it's really nice to have somebody musical, like an instrumentalist who's
your ears for you.
Yeah, who shares a point of view of what you like and they like. It's actually kind of, sometimes it's hard to find that, because people you admire, for instance, for their own recordings, or they're doing something for their own recordings, and sometimes instrumentalists are not, their reality somehow I don't know if you find this, but somehow doesn't include the singer. Like they don't expect
Totally know what you mean.
for something to be to share their reality or something, you
And
know.
some of them don't know the words to the songs, and then they can't play as well for you.
Yeah, but I'm talking about like an arrangement.
Mhm.
Um, there's something where some uh, instrumentalists don't, um, for whatever reason, that it's the way they came up and they just didn't have the cognition needed, but they don't really think of you as part of that um, tribe that is
Like
looking.
the singers are on the left and the musicians are on
Yeah,
the
yeah, yeah. It's interesting. And people like you and me obviously have really listened a lot to instrumental music, you know, and admired it and had great affinity for it and sung it. You know, I mean that's part of who we are, our heads and ears, right? Well, you know what? It's been 2 hours.
I know. I feel like I came over for lunch.
It's been great talking to you. I'm so glad that we did this. Really nice. And I feel like you know, you have tomes of information and experience and points of view. So I look forward to finding out more what's in those tomes.
Well, thank you so much for having me. You're such a lovely person and a lovely vocalist. And I'm so happy to see you again, almost see you again in person. And I hope I see you for real at the next thing in New York, the thing that you were at last year and you were writing me and sending me pictures of. And I said, I'm going next year, but we're going in 2021. And I'm definitely having lunch with you.
Actually, yeah, 2021 or 2022. We'll see. We'll see
Whenever they have it, we'll
what
be
happens. Yeah,
together again.
that's so great. And I just wanted to tell everybody I'm really sorry, but this week I just have to deal with my kitchen, and it's going to be super noisy. And because of the quarantine, I can't really go anywhere with my computer.
I saw that you tried to go to your backyard, and
That didn't work, and
that
Michael,
was a good effort, but
nice, yeah, and it
I
just,
think you should probably take a few days off.
yeah, it's it's okay. So I'm
Then
taking,
you have to show us your kitchen, right?
yeah, new kitchen.
You
So
have to do a show in the kitchen so we can see what it looks
I
like.
definitely will.
A tour of Cathy's
We
kitchen.
have Tony Jones, who's a drummer and a singer, really good singer. And his father used to have a studio that had like a lot of the Hollywood singers and musicians from the 50s
Mm.
recorded there. It was a great studio. He's moved since then, but I remember that studio. It was like this huge room with a quite a large, um, booth, and it was really cool. It was in very old LA, area. And then Saturday, a pianist who used to live here now in New York, who is a very successful composer. And in fact, he writes a lot with Kathy Cousins. She writes a lot of lyrics to his
I know.
material.
Yeah.
They do, some pop for pop artists and stuff.
Mhm.
Anyway, so that's Saturday and Sunday. Speaking of composers, David Amram, who he was the composer for the original. Um, Wait a minute, let me think about the movie. God, I can't believe I can't. It's just not coming right up. It's the movie that it was a political movie, and it was about, definitely a conspiracy. They did a remake of it. It's a very, very famous movie. Anyway, he was the
Network?
no, no, no. This was earlier than the Manchurian Candidate.
Oh,
So he
yeah.
was the original composer for
I
the
read that on your website you were going to have him. I love that music.
and
That's,
you should really tune in, Lisa, because you will love how
I
he
was tuning in. Are you kidding? I
but
think I'm the biggest fan.
thanks. But he's 90 years old and he speaks
Awesome.
he has this flowing out of spirit and action and sharing. I mean, he's really fun to talk with. And he also, as a musician, played with a lot of heavy bebop players. He also led the Philharmonic in New York. And so he's really interesting. He has a lot of life experience. But anyway, so, and then after that, of course, there'll be more people after that, of course. So come back on Friday, and we'll do Friday.
No, absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Such a pleasure.
It was great speaking with you. Bye.
Right.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, everybody.
Yay.
Thank you.